Hello and welcome to the Bookish Rambles podcast with me, Holly.
And me, Becky.
I'm Melanie Lihen-LaMoy, and I am writing my debut novel, In the Dark of the Night. It's a gothic low fantasy about an atheist girl who is blackmailed into a demon hunting organization. You guys can find me on less popular sites, I guess, like Blue Sky, Kara, as well as TikTok probably being my most popular or well updated. I believe I am also on YouTube, though I rarely post on there.
My first question, I suppose, to get into it, as you said, it's about a woman who gets blackmailed into being a demon hunter. I wanted to ask, because it is set in, like, a university. Would you call it college, I guess?
I believe it is... I believe it's a university. I usually just refer to it as St. Catherine's.
That is fair. The thing is, I never know what to say when it's, like, a book that's not set in England. I'm never like, do I adjust what I speak?
I mean, American colleges are very different to the way UK universities are. Like, with the UK university, we only study one subject.
Yeah, you don't declare a major.
No, we can take smaller, like, I suppose you call them electives. Like, when I was doing my bachelor's, I did Japanese as, like, a choice, I guess.
I did a minor in French, but only for 1 year.
Oh, yeah. But, like, we have those options, but most of the modules that we have were, like, English. They have to be, like, within the, like, the department that the degree's part of. So, like, when I did I did creative writing in both my degrees, and it's, like, all the modules were, like, English lit on my bachelor's. My modules on my master's were just set. I couldn't choose on my master's. So it's very, very different. I think you have to take, like, maths classes and all sorts in colleges, don't you?
Like, science, and, like...
It's like school, almost. Yeah, I think that's why, like, a lot of...
Yeah, it's, in the US, the first 2 years are dedicated to what is considered core classes, and those core classes are just the usual stuff you do in high school. You know, it's language studies, it's literature, it's like regular history, math, science, it's the whole thing. But for 2 years, so like half your college or university experience is spent doing high school essentially again.
See, that's crazy to me. Okay, so basically, the question I was, like, getting to,
sorry.
No, I did this.
This is normal. We just go off on a tangent. It's crazy.
It's actually a part of the official branding of the podcast, though, so don't be afraid to do that yourself. But yeah, I wanted to know, because it's set at a university, but it's very, like, based off of the descriptions and stuff, and I hate to make this comparison, but it's very much like the sort of, like, the Hogwarts thing of, like, this school that has, like, a lot of history and, like, the secrets, and, like, the school itself is almost like a setting and you're kind of curious about it. And I was wondering, I guess, like, was there any inspiration like that? Like, did you go to a university, for example, that was like that, or did you just read or see something and you were like, that would be a cool setting for this story?
Not exactly. I mean, I myself am a goth in my life. Like, I'm very, very much in the subculture as well. But I went to art school, and while it was in a historical place in, like, Savannah, Georgia, I went to SCAD. I did not stay very long. I believe it was right at COVID. I graduated in 2020. I did not have a prom. I did not have a graduation even. It was a slideshow at, like, 6 a.m. Oh. And so my first semester in college was just all completely online. And while it had been my dream school for well over a decade, I just kind of ended up, and I was living in this very, very historical place. It absolutely is more, ironically, I think it's more akin to the North, because the North has a lot more, like, of these beautiful brick historical buildings that are kind of more Gothic. Here, it's a little different. You know, we take Spanish influences, we take predominantly French influences down here. But I think if there was anything that was, I could say, influenced me heavily, or pieces of media that I was heavily influenced by, would ironically be, I think, Blue Exorcist and Blue Beetle, the Blue Beetle comics.
I have read a little tiny bit of Blue Exorcist, actually. I remember very little, but I remember thinking, and now that you've said that, that actually makes a lot of sense, because
Yeah, no, I can see it. I don't even like Blue Exorcist because I just can't. I just couldn't get into it. My brother loves it, but I just couldn't get into it. And yeah, but I think I watched like 2 episodes. I was like, this is not for me.
I think
And that's
it's
fair.
it's got the sort of vibe of like I don't know how to explain it. Kind of like Pokemon. Bear with me. Where like what I mean by that is that like there are different types of Pokemon, like different categories of Pokemon, and you kind of have to use their strengths and weaknesses and bear those in mind. I know that I could have given like a million other examples of something similar, but I feel like that was one thing that kind of stood out to me, was that it felt like there was almost as if there was like a real life influence behind the academic stuff in the book, if that makes sense. Like the classes, for example, they felt...
Oh yes, I actually study religion from a historical standpoint as a hobby. As I love religious scholarship. I love studying the study of religion as a whole, and a lot of the classifications and a lot of like the smaller stuff here and there are actually from over, I would have to say, probably over 30 hours of study.
I mean, it I think pays off. Yeah, it felt to me very much like all of the different, because as you said, it's about like demon hunting, but it's not just like the supernatural demons, for example, where for anyone who hasn't seen Supernatural, their demons are like these creatures. They look human because they inhabit human hosts, possessions, I suppose would be the way, and they travel as like smoke and stuff. Yours, it's not like they're all the same, but they look like different people. It's that there are actual different types, and like I'm explaining this really badly, but like that's what I meant by like the Pokemon thing, was that like there's this kind of oh my god, what is the word? It's like a almost like, it's like there's like a whole history of the different types of demons, and like knowledge to be learned from an academic standpoint, rather than just this is how you destroy a demon. It's like there are specific ways for different types.
Oh yes, absolutely. And on top of in the series, as you know, we go further in, because towards the I will say we get hints throughout the book, and especially towards the end of the first book, but there's a whole another world, and not just demons and monsters, but as well as even just how to destroy them, the magic systems that they inhabit and how those work are also very different. We get to learn about a couple of other different magic systems and how they're influenced. But for the amount of world building I've built into this series, we don't really get to kind of be in the Crimson. I do reference it a couple of times in the book that what is the equivalent of hell, or the place where these demons originate, is referred to as the Crimson. And we don't actually get to be in the Crimson until I think the 3rd series. Well, we do get to be in it, well, not to spoil anything, but like we don't get to have a longer stay in the Crimson until the 3rd series.
I mean, I think as I said, I think it's very intricate, like the level of detail, and it feels like almost as if like this is reality in a way. Like it's very like this is like there's a long history of these people doing this job, to the point that they're able to teach it so matter of factly. Like they have they have like slides on a presentation to show people, and to be like, look, this is what you can expect. And it feels very lived in, that sort of the world of the demons specifically, but like again, the sort of variety in just the way that things are it's crazy. Like I can only imagine how much world building you had to do before you even like began writing in order to get that level of detail, because as I said, it's like there are classes in the story which we read, and the main character is learning along with the reader, basically, about everything. But I think it's just really interesting to see this sort of take on a subject that has obviously been done a lot throughout, like, human history. Like, you look at a lot of, like, the older texts, which were very religious in nature. It is nice to see, especially from the perspective of an atheist, the idea that these creatures are real, which I get that's a sort of the thing that has always intrigued me about religion and, like, demons and whatnot, is that they do imply the existence of a reason to be religious, and yet it doesn't mean that you have to believe just because there's that evidence there. And, like, having a character who is an atheist, who sees an angel and is kind of disgusted by it, because, like, it's just, I just think that's interesting. My thoughts are starting to get a little bit muddled because I have so many on this, like, specific topic. But yeah, I guess that was one of the main things, though, was, like, the way that you went about, like, the religious aspect and the sort of details, and, like, blurring what is real in our world versus what is real in this world, so that you have, like, this pre-existing knowledge. It was just really interesting, and I did want to know, like, was the sort of religious aspect inspired by, because I swear, oh my god, I'm jumping from place to place. Is it, like, kind of inspired, I guess, by, like old Catholic churches, like the proper huge ones with the stained glass and all of the, you know, the really gothic architecture, and, like, the idea of almost, like, religious trauma being involved with that sort of stuff?
Yes, absolutely. As much as I absolutely adore the aesthetic of Gothicism, you can't really ignore its influence, well, at least religion's influence in it, at least in the aesthetic or in the architecture aspect of it. I was baptized and born a Catholic, and then I had spent most of my life going to different Christian denominations because I live in the south of the U.S., so I live in the Bible Belt, and there is a church every 30 minutes. There'll be a road. I remember there was a road that I was driving up. There were 6 churches just going up this one road, and I've been to 9 different churches over the course of my life, some for years at a time, different denominations even, and eventually, as I got older, ironically enough, it was a few years ago that I, upon studying religion, and religion being something I've always studied, I ended up settling on non-Zionist Judaism.
I feel like
and I was supposed to convert this year, but I missed my window, so I will be converting next year.
See, that is really, like, quite cool to me that you, I guess, not regained, is that the right word? Held on to your faith, but still sort of grew with it. I think that's really, it's nice that that's the case, because there are a lot of people who obviously, especially in, like, the southern
Yes,
landscape.
it was very hard to do, because most of my friends are atheists. In fact, I think I only have 2 friends who are even remotely religious. 3 if I count my sister, even though 2 of those are pagans. Most of them have given up on religion entirely, and unfortunately, growing up in the Bible Belt, I get to watch not just the way that religion impacts people positively, but mostly how it impacts people negatively, and how it harms them, unfortunately. And it's a very, very tricky and almost sad thing in the way that you have to come to terms with things, but also for some reason can't seem to let go.
Yeah, I did.
Do you know,
Sorry.
Holly, I was just gonna get. I just while we're on the topic of religion, because I find it really fascinating. Just because this point's come up. So, like, I feel like being raised, like, obviously, like, because I was raised Protestant, but growing up in the UK, it's very different to, like, how American Christians are. It's like I'm not religious now. I am what I would consider agnostic. I'm not sure. I used to be atheist, but I'm more like, I don't know. We don't know, do we?
It's just hard, isn't it? So, like...
Yeah. So, like, the school I went to was, like, a religious school. So it was, like, indoctrinated in everything we did. Like, we had to, like, sing hymns every Friday. Yeah, we had to say a prayer at the end of the day. And then we always had to go to the church. This sounds like the most most quintessential like British thing ever, but I went to church I went to school in a tiny little village, which I live in a big city, but like it's on the outside of the city. So we used to have to walk to the church from the school, like down the road, past an old pub, because the church is like 700 years old. And yeah, we always used to have like a service there all the time. So like I grew up surrounded by it, so I never really questioned it. It's not until I was like when we went to high school, because we go to high school when we're about 11 to 12, and that like when I started to like actually question stuff, and I was like, wait, hang on. So, but I just think it's just very interesting how like Americans. I think there's some religious schools, but I don't think like your public schools, like they're not really like that, are they? Because like my high school was like that as well.
It's because America is such a large melting pot. It just and our government is supposed to be predominantly secular. We're usually religion is not necessarily like super allowed to be enforced by schools. I know that the U.S., especially in Christian nationalism, they're trying to push for more Christianity in schools, which would kind of go against which actually does go against our Constitution in keeping, because we have those guards that say that religion is supposed to stay out of the government, and which of course extends to public schools. We do have religious private schools, but of course we're not supposed to have religion within public school. Ironically enough, in this area, despite the amount of churches, I also grew up around a lot of Muslim people as well. I'm very, very proud to say that I actually live in at least as it was declared in 2023. I'm not sure about 2024 or this year, but I know for a fact that 2 years ago, the county I live in now is the most diverse county in the country. It beats out California. It beats out any of the 5 boroughs in New York. We just have such a diversity in this county.
That's pretty cool.
So nice. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like when you find a good place where you can just, because as well, like, this is the thing with American schools, I feel like they have like where you pledge allegiance to the flag and stuff. That's like your version of our doing prayers and stuff every assembly that we have and stuff, where, to be honest, I don't understand why it's not like that here. Not like, no, not not that I think we should do that, but in the sense that like I don't understand why it's so normal for like Christianity specifically, because even just like thinking logically about it, if we were to do this genetically, I'm half Catholic, half Protestant. So there's like a
I've never heard of it. I've never heard someone say that, Holly. That's such an interesting take on it. Okay.
But like, it's just, imagine how weird it would be for someone of one of those denominations specifically to go to a school that is the other. Like, it just, to me, it's always been so weird. And I think it's really interesting that in your book specifically, just to bring it back to the book, to make sure that, you know, my point actually, I promise there is a point here. I really felt, that's why I asked about like the religious trauma sort of stuff, because I feel like it is really interesting to have a book that deals with themes that are at their core they're religious. Like, you can't, like, you know, there's no way, you can't argue that like demons aren't a religious thing when they are. Like, whether you believe in them and you're not religious, or you don't believe in them and you are religious, I think it, you know, like the previous texts and whatnot, they all tie it to religion. And so to have a book about that, but written from the perspective of an atheist, set in a school that is very church-like in its aesthetic, and which deals with these sorts of themes of like the divine being terrifying and horrific, and of this with the, for example, the teacher that they have, this class of demon hunters. I'm not going to say a name for reasons, but I think it was really interesting that, you know, you have this concept of, and this is specifically the thing that made me think of religious trauma, was the idea that sometimes the good guys, aka the religion, the people, the the sort of the priests, I don't know the words because I'm not I'm not a big like Christian type person, but the people who wear like the black collars and the white ties.
Priest is right.
Okay, those sorts of people, they're supposed to be like the good guys, but it's a bit more ambiguous. It deals with the idea of like, well, are all demons, innately deserving to be killed viciously because they are demons? Or is it more telling that these humans who believe in God are just willing to kill these people? Like, I thought it had a really interesting conversation around that sort of discussion, which, in my opinion, is so important because that's the kind of discussion that a lot of very ultra-religious people aren't willing to have, and which creates for a lot of people that religious trauma of like, well, you think that I'm wrong, but you're not willing to acknowledge the damage of your own actions. Like, it was really interesting to me. I don't know.
Yes, a really big theme in the Bible Belt, at least in my experience in the churches that I have grown up in, and in the and growing predominantly up in Christianity, is that it's really funny in the way that when you're starting out, they really want you to ask questions, but they can rarely answer them depending on how far in you get. And the further in you get to Christianity, especially in the United States, especially in the South, and especially in the Bible Belt, you kind of get to this point where you realize that for a lot of people, to doubt, to ask questions, and to reject or deny something that is being told to you by another person makes you in air quotes, a bad Christian, or a faithless person. To doubt, to essentially question the authority, usually being pastors or priests. And I never liked the idea of that. I never liked the idea that if you doubted, that made you less religious. I think that in that sense and in that idea is part of the reason that I ended up in Judaism. Because in Judaism, it's a really big deal to be able to doubt, to be able to argue, is kind of really, really big in that religion in particular. But for them, kind of like following orders or following what you're told without question is like a very, very big sign of religious faith. And it is not something that Saya can really do.
Yeah.
And I think you do that, especially, I won't go into spoilers, but you especially do that quite well with I won't mention the character because I don't want to spoil. I just try to be careful, like, going into spoilers, because because I believe, are you self-publishing the book?
I am, depending on how long the drafts take me. As you know, it is quite a long book. I'm hoping for a release date in January of next year. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit of a control freak. And I'm also an artist, so I don't think I'll ever do traditional, simply because I know that when I hand over my rights, I also hand over a lot of creative freedom, and it's something I could never fathom.
Because it was like, my book deals a lot with classism and stuff. I was like, I don't want that to change. I don't want it to be more it's commercial, yes, but like there's elements to it that don't make it too much commercial. But yeah, going back to my point, so like, you do that so I won't mention the character's name with it, but you do that quite well with one of the characters, like exploring like what we've just talked about, especially with her, and I feel like she really comes into her own, like exploring that and still keeping what is correct to her and like what she believes in.
I think I know who
I also just want to add this point, because as much as I do express it here and there, but I think one of the greatest things that I could have, well, I guess a really good way of expression is that I absolutely do have characters who don't question, but are also still reasonably good people, like Beth, and I think Josie. There are absolutely people who...
Yeah, I thought of her instantly.
She's absolutely... I pretty much can say they're my favorite character about any of my characters, really. But I think in the realm of, like, of course, we in in the process of questioning religion and looking at the harm, I also wanted to ensure that I included characters who religion still makes them still they're good people either despite religion or still good people because of religion. In the case of Beth, because absolutely, I think there are absolutely still great good people that are religious. I just also can ignore the fact that there absolutely is harm depending on who it affects.
It is a really, I think it's an interesting topic, and the way that you've sort of gone into that because like as I said, that's why I brought up that topic in the first place, was because I felt like there was that sort of subtext, which could just be because like I love books about religious trauma, like sort of dissecting, because I also find it quite interesting. I actually have a book that I plan on writing at some point where one of the main characters is going to be a Catholic comedian who is going to use her sort of religion and the sort of ups and downs of being a Catholic as one of the like reasons basically for her comedy, like one of the sort of driving forces. And so I've done not the most research yet, but I find it really interesting, and I have like a lot of different books that I'd like to read because it does sound really interesting. And like I've done history, so I know about like religion in England at the very least, like hundreds of years ago, or thousands of years ago even as well. And so like for me, a book like this, which I mean I'm gonna say it now, this is like my kind of book, like the premise. If as I said, I mentioned Supernatural area, I loved Supernatural. I love the idea of there being like an actual sort of academic way of taking down in quotes monsters, of there being like this sort of, you know, this written method that breaks through the chaos of the violence and the attacks and the seemingly sort of unexplainable things that happen. And I feel like you have that really interesting way of like the angels being, because I wouldn't say this is a spoiler, because it's like the first chapter, I'm pretty sure, is where the first angel sighting happens. Yeah. So the way that they're described, the way that the sort of demons are described, I loved the fact, I have to say this, the idea of like demons that are sort of coincided with nature and like plants and animals in their appearance and stuff. That is so cool to me. That is like so fantasy that I love it, you know? Like, I just...
Thank you.
It's like the sort of visuals were so there, you know? Even like the description of the main character's house, I fully felt... And like this, again, I have a... This is so weird to say because it's such a small country comparatively, but I have like British bias. So when I read a book, I do kind of think about it being set in Britain. Even if I know it's not.
That's perfectly fine. I didn't have a set place in mind. I know a lot of people, especially romance writers, we have a lot of romance writers that we know, and they pick like very, very specific locations, and I didn't. I just kind of, I never name a town. I never do anything like that because naming is something I'm not good with. But really, I think to be completely honest, I am very heavily inspired by places like the UK and like France, because I'm not gonna lie, y'all's architecture is absolutely beautiful.
It really is. This is my like biggest problem in life, is that I love mid-century modern homes, which are primarily American, but I grew up in Liverpool, which is, if you may have heard of it, it's used a lot as a double for like New York and like Chicago and stuff in films.
It's where the Beatles are from.
Yeah, but it was used for the newer Batman film as Gotham, because it's been used recently for Gotham, I'm pretty sure, because they've been filming here lately. But it's one of those sort of places where that sort of architecture, the older, like the Georgian, the Edwardian, the Victorian, it's all there, and there's some like really old stuff as well, and I just, like, to me that's home. And so reading this book, I think that's why I was like, I could fully see this character being from like York or something. I don't know. That's like, in my head, it's like a small town, maybe near York, which I don't know how to describe it. York is very old. York is, they have like York Dungeon, which is, it's what it says, it's a dungeon, but it's got that sort of vibe. It's a very gothic city.
Yeah, York's over 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
That sounds so beautiful. My sister currently lives in Germany, so hopefully when I make my way over there, I shall be traveling Europe. And architecture is one of like the predominant things I am kind of looking to look at. So York was actually very, very high on the list. It makes me really, really happy to actually hear that you guys thought of England, even though the story theoretically takes place in the United States. It makes me really, really happy because, you know, when in a lot of places in the United States, obviously the older it gets, the more we get into brick, the more we get into cobble, and it starts to, you know, obviously, you know, colonization, those were originally from the UK, so we get a lot of like UK architecture at that time, and so it's really funny because theoretically it would be placed in the South. You know, Bible Belt is very, very strong, but the architecture tells me that it's, you know, closer to the north. So I didn't give a particular town for that reason, just because I know the architecture kind of mixes a lot.
Yeah, do you know what I had in my head when I was reading it? I kept thinking of the American South, but especially like, is it like towards like Alabama and stuff? I don't know why. I think it's because of the religious college. That's all I could think of, because like I've never been to the south of the US. I've been to like Las Vegas or like Florida. That's the places I've been, so I've never been anywhere else. So that's all I could think of.
Yeah, like a religious university is kind of unheard of here. I don't know of any.
We do have them. We do have them, but they're very rare.
I know that there are at least a few pretty significant ones in America. And I will say, like, I didn't think of that because when I think of the South, I tend to think, like, the main thing would be, like, New Orleans, or one of my favourite films is The Green Mile, so I think of, like, 1935 fictional Louisiana. Like... like it's
but Louisiana has a lot of French architecture.
Yeah, which is very it's not gothic, but it's very much different than what I had in mind. But I do get what you mean. I think it's weird because like the architecture and like when I was picturing the house, I was picturing like a cottage. Specifically, there is this like one reference image that I have on a Pinterest board for a fantasy world that I'm planning, where it's like this building that's being taken over by plants. And I was just like, that is so this book. Like, that is so where she lives. Like, honestly, this setting is simultaneously so American, but also so not American to me. It's just so weird. Like, but yeah, I feel like you did like a good job.
It's an amalgamation.
Yes. You did such a good job of like the vibes of like the buildings and the architecture and the sort of I think it's like the secret society stuff. I always think it's very English inspired because I feel like Dead Poets Society is like a big one that a lot of people think of, but when you think of like the origins of like the boarding school stories and stuff like that, realistically it came from people like Enid Blyton and, you know, the sort of the British writers who were writing about these very wealthy British boarding schools in places. And I feel like...
absolutely.
So it's got that sort of vibe to me inherently, but I think that, again, like the secret society stuff is just so it like, there's just so much like to say about this one specific topic. Yeah, I mean, Becky, did you have any questions about any, like, I don't want to...
Yeah, it's alright. So, because the book is so long, is there a reason? Did you just want to make it that long, or is there a reason? It just because it's so long, like it's not what. Yeah. Like obviously, some
I guess
people will do like write a lot.
Or are you?
Is it just? She's an underwriter.
I was really nervous to say this with. You guys are authors. I'm sure y'all know all the drama, but I've actually been working on The World at least for about 10 years.
The Audrey Windsor stuff.
I know. I know.
We're not gonna criticize you for that.
No. See, here's the thing. I don't think it's a problem to work on the same world for 10 years.
I think it's the fact that I don't think she listened to the feedback. I think that was the main issue.
In fact, I would argue that she rejected feedback very obstinately at every step. Which is like, it's not just not listening, it's like refusing.
I had finished my first version of this novel when I was like, I think 15, 16, after like working on it for almost about the same amount of time as I worked on it now. And it was about 130,000 words then, but it had a lot of filler. It was, it had so many issues and so many pacing problems, which, there's so much that goes into a pacing issue. But, and I technically wrote the sequel as well. It was always supposed to be like a 10 book series, but eventually I gave up on writing for a while. Writing was just something I did for fun because I thought I really wanted to do fashion design. And after leaving school and kind of realizing that as much as I loved fashion design, it wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. It was actually my boyfriend at the time who really sat me down and was like, listen, writing is your life. It is the thing that you love. I've watched you write I've watched you write such long books, and it's very, very obvious you have a passion for it. I think that maybe that's the thing that you need to focus on. I think you need to really sit down and make this book something that you do with your life. And so initially, this book, as long as it is now, I actually split it up into 2 books.
How long was it before that?
Like 400,000.
Well, initially when I wrote the first draft, I felt myself starting to tire because, it's a long process. And so I stopped around chapter 5 and I wrote a bullet pointed draft for a draft 0, and I came back to writing on the actual draft, and as I was fleshing it out, I think I'm at chapter 10 or 11 by then, and I'm looking at the word count and I'm looking at the bullet pointed draft and I'm like, there's no way. So
oh wow.
I ended up splitting it up. I think the exact date was August 23rd of 2023, because I wrote it down the exact date I was going to split it up. And so which is good because I didn't really have much on what I was going to do in book 9, so that kind of solves my issue. But when I split it up and I wrote it down, it actually wasn't supposed to be this long necessarily. It's just that I had a huge pacing issue. There's a big reveal at around chapter 10. I'm sure y'all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And that was originally going to be in chapter 5, and everything between chapter 4 and chapter 5 and chapter what is now 10 didn't exist. And I was I feel like there's a huge pacing issue right here. And so I added 20,000 words in draft 2, which kind of created
I cannot imagine
a gap in the quality.
The amount of writing you must have done is crazy dedication.
I finished the first official draft in less than a year. It was about 6 months, and it probably would have been faster had I not spent the remaining time world building, considering now I have 32 books planned.
Oh my gosh,
that is so many books.
That's dedication.
They all take place. I think all of them except for 2 don't take place in this universe. In the universe that I've created, though theoretically, because 2 of them are actually sci-fis. Technically 3 of them are sci-fis, but one of them is kind of just so ridiculously far into the future, even farther than the other 2 sci-fis, that theoretically you can consider them a whole nother universe. Yeah. Though theoretically I could consider it in the same universe, but I won't.
See that screenshot that I mentioned that I found on Pinterest of the thing, that is for a fantasy series that I have that I plan on being a pretty big series. But I cannot even imagine thinking that many books ahead. Honestly, my brain, the idea of even creating a 10-book series makes my brain hurt. It's that is
I
so
had
cool.
been very ambitious as a child and just went with it. I would also like to add that I'm not gonna lie, and everyone who's listening in, you heard it here first. The second series after the 10-book series, which will probably be done in a decade from now, considering how long it takes me to write. It'll be different if I write full time. But the next series after this one is going to be a 3-book series, so much, much smaller, of one of our favorite characters, who cannot be named at this moment. But we'll just say that the professor has even more secrets than we assume.
Oh. I love that we both did that in time.
She is easily probably either number 1 or number 2 my favorite character I have ever written, and I'm kind of obsessed with her, and thusly she gets her own series.
It's really interesting that you've got this sort of... because it's kind of giving cult at times. Like, she says it in the first chapter when she stumbles into it. She's like, what the hell is this going on? And I feel like it is so interesting because everybody is so shady. Like, you literally cannot trust a single person for more than 5 minutes because it is such a complex world that you just can't, like, you have to only trust yourself. Even if you trust someone else at one moment, to trust them in the next, it's like you have to be able to rely on yourself at every given sort of circumstance. Like, it's just so interesting.
Like, it's really funny because other people in the organization, obviously in the same way that everyone with in religion has kind of their own experiences, whether they be positive or negative, and they're kind of mixed. You know, Thea does have that, you know, she does gain friendship through the experience of being in the night, no matter how unfortunate being in the night is, in the same way that, like, because the knight is not very obligated to be nice to her, because she to them is just an outsider that they kind of have to put up with, to other members and other classes in the night, they actually have very positive experiences with the night, and thusly are more likely to remain loyal, in the same way that people who have overwhelmingly positive experiences with religion are more likely to defend it or stay in it, as compared to people who have negative experiences with it.
That is so interesting. Like, it's just so... that's the thing that really struck out to me. Like, the idea of how you can read, because that's the thing with my brain. It's very much wired towards, you read a book, you analyze it, you look for the themes, the way that you can interpret it. I can forgive many things in a book, but if I can't think about those deeper themes, and it's so, like, right there. Like, it's not ever stated out loud, I don't think. But it's like, you just kind of know when you're reading, like, there's this vibe about these characters and this situation. It's just so interesting. And I guess as well, we wanted to talk a little bit about your writing process. Is there, like... so I'm assuming you knew, like, basically from the beginning. Oh, no, hang on. I have a question and I need to say it before I forget because I've already forgotten it once. So you wanted to originally, or you thought that you wanted to design, like, clothes, like fashion.
Mm-hmm.
I find that really interesting because of the thing that I said about how it was, like, very visual, the sort of character designs, the creature designs. Is there, like, did that, like, help, do you think, with the... because I feel like especially like couture fashion is so... it's so, like, pushy on the boundaries of, like it's stuff that's unwearable a lot of the time, fashion.
Yeah.
But I feel like
or that there's only one kind in the world.
Yeah, but I feel like that's kind of, to me, like, one of the hardest things about explaining things visually is, like, the cohesion of things. But I imagine, like, that would be something that you would understand because of your education and your sort of experience.
To be completely honest with you, ironically enough, I don't think that fashion really had too heavy of a hand. I think it's probably my smaller in comparison to at least my interest in fashion. My like for architecture, as well as, I know this is gonna, and you know, I've watched a lot of animation is probably predominantly what I enjoy, because there's plenty of things that you could do within animation that you can't do in live action, which is what I absolutely adore about it. And I think growing up with these monsters, and I'm not gonna lie, I like recently, I think my mother had brought it up, but I watched a lot of Face Off growing up, and if you don't know what that is a TV show where like special effects artists will compete in kind of assembling prosthetics and assembling kind of like monster costumes.
See, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I kept forgetting to add this, but you mentioned the angel in the first chapter and kind of like her visceral reaction to that. Ironically enough, that's not an original idea of mine. Historically, angels, or also known as the Malak, they are relatively grotesque beings. The first thing I think that is said when an angel arrives is people are very, very frightened of this being. I'm sure if you look up biblically accurate angels, you'll see very, very interesting photos. But they said, do not be afraid, because
is that the ones with the eyes and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I obviously took reference kind of from a biblically accurate angel in terms of like the eyes and probably where the placements would be if kind of on that kind of human body. But in the same way that demons were supposed to be kind of beautiful, and it was supposed to symbolize not just things like temptation, but things like how you cannot be, kind of was supposed to be a test of like altruism or genuine kindness, that you can be nice to someone that you don't find attractive, or
like
that
the
you
Beauty and the Beast sort of thing.
fear. Yes. Versus like a demon who is very beautiful and very ethereal, and obviously people are going to be more nice to them as compared to like an angel.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. One of my cousins is really good at special effects makeup that she just like started doing like herself when she was young, and it's really cool. I totally see how that sort of would shape it, because it is really interesting how crazy good some of this stuff is. Like, honestly, it's like the way that some people dress, even for like Comic-Con and stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, that is better than some professional
practical effects. Like, I love old practical effects before everybody started using CGI, especially I don't know, because I grew up watching a lot of 80s films. I don't know if anyone's ever seen like The Dark Crystal with like Jim Henderson's puppets.
Yeah.
Thank you, someone knows what I'm talking about. Nobody ever knows what I'm talking about. And
the Neverending Story.
Yes, like,
it's like that.
My dad made me watch that as a kid. Yeah, I just loved the effects of that, even though it scared me as a kid.
That is the vibe of this book, though. I think it's got that like you can have like almost your own visceral reaction through the page, metaphorically speaking, because it was digital. That was why I wanted to ask about that, and I forgot, but yeah. Because as well, I wanted to say, like, obviously I asked if there were any influences, you said the gothic stuff. I do think it's really fun that you have taken these sorts of, like, real-life things and turned them into something of your own that's very detailed in its, like, world building. I think that's really... I always love stuff like that. I was literally having a conversation with my mum last night where I was like, you have to be within like the suspension of disbelief. Like, you have to make it believable, even if it's something completely outlandish and fantastical. And I feel like the history that you've given, it makes it feel like it could be like, you, like, for all I know, like, you literally could have pulled this from a religious text and I wouldn't have known the difference. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's like how it read, was that it was like very assured in itself, if that makes sense. But yeah, I wanted to, I guess, ask what the writing process was like for you, and did you always know that it was going to be self-published? Like, was that a given, or did you, the more that you sort of spent time in this world, because like, for example, Becky did actually query, but then it didn't feel right, so she just stopped, and like, she was like, I'm gonna self-publish because I can and I want to, and it's what's best for my book. So like, was it like that, or did you just know right from the very beginning?
I actually was aiming to traditionally publish. My sister, who my twin, because I have many sisters, but my twin, she had been writing a novel at the same time. Not that she necessarily wants to be a novelist, it's just something that she enjoys. And so we were discussing it. She said she always wanted to self-publish. And we had gone to a couple of panels I believe we went to a panel in DragonCon in Atlanta, which is what really changed my perspective. They were talking about the differences between traditional publishing and self-publishing, and really getting into the traditional publishing side and how it worked. And at the time, me having really only research on YouTube and not really talking to anybody about it, it really opened my eyes. And it wasn't until, and she asked me how I felt, and I still told her I wanted to traditionally publish, publish, but after doing more research over the course of that year, I realized that like there was a lot of things I wasn't going to be able to do if I traditionally published. Like the cover would not be mine. That I'm aware of, most of the time it's even completely out of your hands. You don't get to make a single decision about it. Sometimes even the title is out of your hands, and somebody else makes a decision on that too. And that knowing that the rights weren't mine, that any art that I create, which is really, really big for me because on top of being a writer, I'm also an artist, and these characters are what most of my art is about. And to think that because they own the rights, my art wouldn't necessarily be canon in terms of rights. They would be more like fan fiction, even if I'm the one who drew them, and that I don't get to, make things like bookmarks or, add kind of art. And I know that theoretically I possibly could if I negotiated that, but at the same time, the idea that the rights in some way wouldn't be mine and that I would have to hand over all of that creative freedom, and I know it would be to professionals, and I know it would probably be in theory what's best, but at the same time, it's the idea of not being able to have that amount of creative freedom as an artist was really kind of painful for me.
See, I fully understand that, and I understand that from the perspective of somebody who, like, I kind of have to self-publish, and I say I have to. No, I have to oh my god. I have to trad publish because I am not currently in a position where I am, like, confident enough. Not like that I'm not confident in my work, but in the sense that, like, obviously you have to be a very assured kind of person, I think, to self-publish properly and to do it well, because you have to have that confidence in yourself and in your vision for your future and whatnot. And I just do not think that I'm good enough at the things that I would need to be to do well with it, but I still am like so afraid because I have like a whole trilogy planned out for the book that I'm currently trying to get published. And the names of those books have meaning and they work together as a set. Like each name is representative of what the book is about thematically. It is about the progression of events and stuff. So it makes sense and it's fitting, but they might decide that those titles aren't good and it will be kind of heartbreaking to have to get rid of that. And I also know that like Margaret Atwood, I think it was, had versions of her books published and she was like, these covers do not represent at all the stories that I've written. And that was Margaret Atwood. This was like 10 years ago, maybe even less. And that's, again, arguably like one of the biggest women in writing. Maybe even like the biggest.
Oh yeah, and hopefully, I think someone tried to start using AI art, which drives me insane because it's just
it's just so frustrating. I wish that there was like more hybrid publishing options because I think a lot of them tend to be a bit suspicious.
Like vanity publishing.
Yeah, like it's so hard to find because like it really, like I fully get that. And I'm not even like an artist. I'm an artist in like the sense that I'm a writer, but I'm not an artist who draws my characters. I cannot imagine not having the rights to draw and sell art of my own characters. So like it makes complete sense to me that you would do that. But I think it's interesting to... Have we asked everyone that's been on the podcast? Because so far we've only had self-pub people on. So have we asked everybody if that was their original plan?
I think so.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Either
I
way,
think a lot of people are gearing towards self-publishing now, because it is such a good option. Obviously, yes, you've got to do everything yourself, but I think if it's done right, like
it's especially like in Novel Bound. I think with the support of the group, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, at some point, let's not lie, trad at the end of the day is far more business sided than most of us would like to admit. And at the end of the day, if my book, if they projected that other books would sell more than mine, I'm still gonna have to do the marketing there, but the likelihood that they would prioritize it or sell it for longer than like 3-4 years is quite low. And then on top of that, I would have to wait, God knows, probably 7 to 10 years until the rights revert back to me to be able to sell it. And I couldn't fathom the thought because I mean the book series is going to be quite long, and because it's going to last probably by the time, even if I stopped selling the first book by the time the last book came out, it'd probably be almost a whole decade, probably more from now. And if I'm going to be selling a book for this long, and probably hopefully for the entirety of my life, then I would rather just continue to have the rights to it the whole time.
Especially with the series, I do think it's kind of crazy. I think about this a lot, honestly, because I have considered, like, if I was to not be able to get this book that I'm querying agented, like, I think I would want to self-publish it rather than it not be published. But it's just, both sides are so difficult for so many different reasons. And it's like, being an author is not for the weak, basically. But I do think it's interesting to know what other people have done, like, their journey. Did you have any questions on that, actually? Because you usually have a few.
What, me?
Yeah.
No, not really, because I think, like, I suppose the question would be, like, how are you planning to, like, self-publish? Because I know everybody's different. So, like, are you doing it like, what websites, or are you just doing it, I don't know, any other different way?
Yeah, actually, I really wanted to stay away from, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, the big scary name Amazon on here, but, like...
Yeah, I've seen that they require, like, exclusivity for ebooks.
Yes, they require a lot of things, and at the end of the day, in terms of just the company as a whole, I'm not a fan, and in the way that they destroy,
Everything.
smaller writers as well. It's especially, even not even considering Audible and the whole scandal with that.
Oh, yeah.
But I never, even though I know it's like a very, very large platform for writers and everything, and I know that if I was planning on indie publishing, it probably would be the best move, because a lot of people are on Amazon and buy their books through there. It's just not something that I want. I think if I was, because I'm going to publish, it's going to be on my own website. I consider it's going to be easier for me, though it will be a little bit harder for people to discover it on their own. It's just kind of what I want to do, as this book, with all of its content warnings and all of its discussions, it very much is not for everybody. And at the end of the day, how do I put this? In terms of, I didn't want to do print on demand, not because I don't think it's viable. I absolutely think it is a great way to write books. I just, with the longevity of my books and how long the series is going to take and everything like that, and probably, especially considering it'll be the first book in a 10-book series, I figured why not do actual, like, offset printing and
I don't know how long it would be as a physical book. That's actually a really good point.
And at the end of the day, Amazon, because of print on demand and kind of how that system is set up, it's more expensive to do than offset printing, which is part of the reason that some authors make less than they would if they did it what is considered a riskier or more traditional way, in the way that like actual publishing houses do it, which is they go through a printing house and they do offset printing, and the larger quantity of books that you get, the less it costs. And pretty much at almost any point, getting something published through offset printing, at least for me, would definitely come out cheaper, especially in the long run, if I did offset printing. And with how long I'm going to be selling this book in my life, I think it would just generally be better for me to do offset printing and just have the physical copies, and honestly take the hit to my wallet and the investment to kind of make more in the long run, if this is going to be what my life is.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. I think it's...
Fortunately, where I live, there's about 3 printing houses just less than an hour from me, and I have a pretty good decision on which one it is. So in the worst case scenario, I don't have to wait for something. I don't have to wait God knows how long for something to come in. I can just show up at the factory and get the books, load them into my car, and that's just it. Especially if I want to do a convention or something like that, to have them so nearby and to be able to physically go to the place that they're making my books and talk to them about options and what they can do. Obviously, they can do more than just what print on demand can do.
See, I've spoken to Becky about this. You can literally, when you have a stock of books, take them to, I don't know what the equivalent would be in America, but we have what we would call car boot sales, which you take like a table into.
I think it'd be like a flea market, kind of, but from a car.
Or like a convention or a art market or something.
It's kind of, you literally drive
Except
the
they
car.
sell all sorts. Yeah, and you literally sell stuff out of the back of your car, and people sell all sorts. Like there's memes about people selling like old used chewing gum.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I'm not joking. I wish I was.
Books, toys, clothes. Like there's people literally sell everything, and so like I know that you can buy like tickets to markets and stuff where you're going to book fairs.
So I'm doing like the Oxford Indie Book Fair in like November, and then I've just had an email about one in Glasgow, but I'm like, do I want to go all the way to Glasgow? I mean,
yeah, you should go though, because like,
yeah,
honestly, it's one of those just things.
It sounds
where
beautiful.
I think it's good to have stock of your own book. I feel like the whole idea of being the one to go out and make connections is like one of the big benefits of being an indie author in the first place, like to actually meet the people who are going to be reading your book. I don't know, I feel like that is it makes so much sense, and I think that it works. I will say it has been an hour and 20 minutes.
we should probably wrap it up. I'm getting
But yeah,
we do this a lot though, don't we? We always go over.
I do think though it's been really interesting. Again, we don't want to spoil too much about like the plot or anything, because the book doesn't come out for a few months yet, at least. I'm not going to do the maths on that because I can't be trusted with maths, but it has some really interesting like themes and the visuals. I've said this before, I can't physically see things in my brain, but I still get the gist. And I think that because I don't see things in my brain, I simultaneously don't care about like descriptions of like characters, but I also really appreciate when there's like, I understand the setting because it helps to ground me instead of me being just like in like this blank space basically in my head. So you've done a very good job of that, like right out the gate, and I feel like the world doesn't feel too big, if that makes sense. Again, to go back to the thing that you were a little bit nervous about saying, I feel like it is a very common criticism of like fantasy worlds generally and big series, that you get thrown a bit too into the deep end sometimes, and it's just like none of this makes any sense to me, like what are you talking about? But we got like literal lessons, which I thought were I love a lesson. I love reading lessons. I'm sorry. It was the most interesting part of Babel to me, and I DNF'd Babel. You know, if it had all been lessons, I would have listened to the whole book. But I'm rambling so much. I'm trying to wrap everything up because we've done like so much rambling that I'm rambling more. But basically, yes, very interesting like concept for a book. I love the sort of the lore and stuff. I think that was really good. I do have 2 favorite characters, and they are, funnily enough, they're 2 of the ones that we have mentioned as being the ones that we liked a lot. So I'm thinking they will be like fandom favourites in the future, and I think it's really fun that you're self-publishing, and we hope to discuss. We've said this before, we'd love to have, we haven't yet, but we'd love to have guests back after they've publish like another book and stuff, and to be like talking about the success and the highs and lows of indie publishing especially. And thank you basically for being here. Thank you for listening, everybody. The book, I will say now, there is a long list of warnings. We haven't really mentioned anything too graphic actually, so I don't think we'll need.
Was it like a page, I believe, if I remember correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, there's a lot of like things discussed, so I understand why they're there.
Yeah. For the actual podcast, I don't think there are any trigger warnings. I can double check that when I edit. But for the book, there are. So, do you have a website yet? I think that's an important question.
No, not yet. That's actually what I'm working on this month, as my my draft is with my copy editor.
Okay, so we'll go and follow the different sources. We'll leave them in the links as usual so that you can easily find them, and then you can find the website when it comes out and order, and also check the thingies, the trigger warnings. I keep forgetting how to say trigger warnings. Oh my god, like can I not? But yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you very much to our wonderful guest for joining us. It was very interesting. It did feel like it was very little time that we spent talking. I'll say that much.
Well,
which is probably
feel
why
free.
it's so
I
messy.
have no problem. I have no problem talking to y'all about it. Whenever, really. So feel free to ask me any other questions. I mean, you guys have my contact information. I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah. But yeah, go follow. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. And we hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.